Error. Yeah, so thank you and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session, which I'm taking in collaboration with Mr. Emmanuel Adebayo, who's the lead presenter on this session. He's just introduced us, but because we forgot to press the record button, I'm just going through this briefly all over again. So thank you, Mr. Adebayo. He's largely responsible for this session, and he does share a passion to empower the youth, regardless of race, regardless of gender. We're equally passionate about empowering our youth. I mean, and if you choose a career in IT, we can assure you that you will always thrive if you acquire knowledge. If you're passionate about acquiring knowledge to support you throughout your journey in IT, you will succeed, you will excel, and you will thrive. So let's just go and take you through the next slide. So we'll be talking today about starting a career in IT and information technology. And as Emmanuel said there earlier, there are many different areas in IT that you can find your own niche in and you can thrive in. And so we'll be discussing the purpose of today's session. We'll be asking ourselves the question, what is information technology? Then we'll be taking a look at the different or some of the different categories of IT that our youth may want to develop a career in. Then we'll be summarizing this session, taking questions, and then we'll be concluding and expressing our gratitude to you for staying to listen to us today. So as Emmanuel said previously, IT has evolved considerably from the 70s to the 80s, 90s, and here we are today in 2022 with IT being unrecognizable to how it was in even in the year 2000, not to talk of 2010 and now 2022. IT continues to evolve, it continues to change, it continues to develop. I remember the first time I attended a Word for Windows training course. This was in the mid-1990s. So before that, I used to use an Android, not Android, an Amstrad computer, which didn't have a mouse, it didn't have a Windows user interface, it didn't have all these graphics. So this was just before Microsoft introduced Word for Windows. That was their first operating system. I remember attending a training course and the instructor said, could you pick up your mouse? And I thought she actually meant that I should pick up my mouse and point it to my screen like a remote control. And that is exactly what I did, because I didn't know that I just needed to scroll my mouse around the table or the mouse pad at the time. But since then, I've developed a career in IT. And of course, everyone who knows both Emmanuel and myself know that without Emmanuel, I wouldn't have developed my career in IT. I would have just been a user of information technology. But Emmanuel has made great strides in the profession. He started way before me. He's a successful infrastructure consultant and engineer. And over the years, IT has enabled both of us to not only carve a niche in our respective industries, but also to develop others who are interested in developing a career in the industry. So we note that there are quite a few adults on this session, as opposed to the youth, but there is room for everybody in IT, regardless of your age, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race. And that's because IT is such a large industry now. As Emmanuel has written here, IT has turned the world into a global village. It affects every nation. I don't know if there is any country in the world that has not been affected by IT. So IT has turned the world into a global village. Today, we'll be taking a look at the various IT careers, or some of the IT careers that are out there, to any of us considering a career as an IT professional. And again, I'd emphasize that although this is a youth seminar, IT is available to anyone of any age who wants to start. It's never too late to start a career in IT. I can assure you of that. And through the ladder back down, we've worked with quite a few individuals over the past 2 years who have started their careers in their middle age, who have found good jobs in their middle age. And that goes to show that as a youth, if you're on this session today, you can rest assured that you can have a lengthy, enjoyable career in the future. If some people are just starting out in their 40s, in their 50s, in their career today. So what is IT? We've taken a look at the Wikipedia definition of information technology. It is the application of computers and telecoms equipment to store data, to retrieve data, to transmit data, and to manipulate data, often in the context of a business or other enterprise. Now, let's just take a look at that definition. So we know that IT, technology, computers are used to store data. You can retrieve any data stored on a computer. Information technology, a computer is used to transmit, to send data from one computer to another computer. And it's used to, information technology is used to manipulate data. So we can use information technology software like spreadsheets to calculate data. We can use databases to search and query data. While it says that information technology is often used in the context of a business or other enterprise, the fact of the matter is that IT today is used in almost every single home across the world. Why is that the case? Well, when we consider that information technology is not only about computers, it's also about mobile devices. And most homes have at least one individual who has a mobile device at home. Most, at least one individual who has a mobile device at home. Look at some of the careers in information technology today. So these are just a list of different categories that we'll be talking through. We've got IT infrastructure, administration, IT administration, and IT management. We've got database architecture, administration, and management. We've got software and application architecture and development, data and infrastructure security, information technology management, and IT procurement. Now, whilst we're focusing today on information technology, please note that without information, technology for anything. Technology enables us to process, manipulate, query data. And that data is then presented as information. The viewers to the recipients of that data, it is presented as information. And that information is used to make or to reach decisions. When we receive a letter in the post, or we receive an email, we read data, we process that data, and then we reach decisions based on that data. We use the data to inform us. So information is a crucial technology. Without information, without data, technology would be of no use. So we'll take a look at all these different career choices, and please note that there are many more choices available, and the list keeps growing as new technologies emerge each and every day. Every day, new technologies emerge. The world will never go back to a day where, or an era where we do not have information technology. We are not going backwards, we're moving forwards on a daily basis. Any questions so far, please? Okay, if there are no questions, let's now take a look at IT infrastructure, administration, and management. IT infrastructure, administration, and management. Who's the design, implementation, maintenance, automation, and customer/stroke technical support, including help desk, first line to third line roles, and the decommissioning of physical components. Look at some of the physical components or infrastructure components that an IT professional may be seeking to manage or administer if they were to work in IT infrastructure, administration, and management duties. So IT, we've got some writing going on here. Thank you. So we've got server support. What is a server? Does anyone know what a server is? Well, if you work in any workplace or even as a consumer, so you have, let's say you're a consumer, you use an iPhone or an Android phone. You buy some storage on iCloud. Data in iCloud is stored on a server. A server is a hard drive that stores data. It also can store it must have an operating system on it, like Windows Exchange Server for emails. Some of us may be old enough to remember the BlackBerry phones of old. There were back-end BlackBerry servers that would store your data. So all of our data is stored on servers, on hard drives. There is also an operating system. You may have a Microsoft Dynamics CRM, customer relationship management system server. You may have an SQL database server that hosts the operating system for SQL databases. IT infrastructure admin and management duties. You may be responsible for managing desktops. Laptops are classed as PCs, personal computers. So you may be responsible for maintaining or rolling out or decommissioning desktops, laptops, servers, tablets. Working components. What are networking components? Well, an example, which most of us may be able to identify with, is our router. Most of us who have a wireless network at home have a small router. We have a router provided by our internet service provider. So in organizations, you will have routers, enterprise routers. So not your tiny Beat Internet or Virgin Media router. Rather, you would have larger enterprise specific routers. Those are networking components, hardware firewalls. So if you're working in IT infrastructure admin and management, you may be responsible for designing, implementing, or maintaining networking components. You may want to be a hardware engineer or architect. Then we have storage components. The tapes could store your data in the cloud on enterprise size servers again, racked servers, which is just a rack of massive hard drives that store trillions of terabytes of data. Storage components. And then you may want to work in a data center. A data center could be on premises at the location of your employer, or it could be with a cloud provider like Microsoft that provide Microsoft Azure, or Amazon Web Services that provide AWS. So that is provided by Amazon. They have a cloud solution where an organization can store its data and process its data. The advantage being that you have business continuity, you have disaster recovery available. If your systems go down, it's backed up across multiple data centers if you store your data in the cloud. Then you've got Google Cloud as well. They're another provider. You may want to work with a cloud provider as an IT infrastructure or administration or management professional. And then you've got hybrid hosting facilities where your organization or your employer may want to store the data, their data on premises and in the cloud. Let's take a look at roles that you could apply for if you want to work as an IT infrastructure administrator or management professional. Well, we've got the help desk analyst and engineer, help desk analyst or help desk engineer. both of those roles actually, rather than that role, both of those roles tend to be for professionals just starting out in their career. Start out as a technical support engineer or a help desk support engineer who's responsible for responding to calls, telephone calls from employees within the business, asking for help for their desktops or systems, laptops as well. So if you want to start as a help desk analyst or help desk engineer, you need to have that baseline understanding of a desktop system, operating system as well, like Windows 11, Windows 10, Windows XP, if that's still in use. So that's the responsibility or role of a help desk analyst or help desk engineer, to support business users, questions or issues with their laptops or desktops and the operating systems on them. Not only the operating systems, also we could be required to support our colleagues or our employees with their applications on the desktops or laptops, such as Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint or Outlook. So if you're interested in a help desk career or a help desk engineer career, you need to ensure that you acquire knowledge about an operating system. Acquire knowledge about applications as well. And then remember I said on the previous slide that we have first line support, second line support, and third line support. That goes without saying that as you acquire more knowledge and become more of an expert, you progress from answering basic questions about the computer, about the operating system, about the software applications on that system, to answering advanced questions and resolving advanced questions as a third line engineer. Now, please note one thing, one very important thing actually. Many organizations use different terminologies for these roles. So in an organization, you may be referred to as a help desk analyst or engineer. In another organization, you may be called, in the same role, a technical support analyst or engineer. So don't worry about, or don't be fearful of applying for roles once you've viewed the job description. The title isn't as important as knowing what to do on the job. So for each job that you will apply for, make sure that you view the job description and know that you can do most of what's in the job description before applying for the role. And I think that I'll just mention this here because I don't think I will mention it further down on in this session. It's important that we don't just acquire book knowledge for any role that we'll talk about here today. So if you've done certification, or if you're interested in certification, progress your career or to start your career, it's important that you gain hands-on experience On your personal desktop or laptop, on your friends' desktops and laptops, the youth, you know an auntie or a relation who runs a one-man business, go and offer to help them sort out any IT issues to gain experience. So please don't say, well, I don't have any experience. How am I going to get the experience to back up my book knowledge? There's always room for you to go out there and be proactive. Start from your own personal computer. Extend it to family, and then try and find relations who may be able to offer you that experience in a personal business or a small business. So technical support analyst and engineer, as I said there, they are similar to help desk analysts. They may be more hands-on. So if they are to be found in a company, they may be responsible for supporting or upgrading a PC. A PC needs more memory. They could open up a PC, a personal computer, and just insert more memory sticks in. Responsible for installing hardware into a server. Responsible for plugging in network cables into desktops in an office. So if that's something that interests you, again, it's an opportunity out there. If you've got experience in setting up your home router, again, that's a good example of what a technical support analyst might do in the workplace. Plug in computers into network ports. But they could also be responsible for troubleshooting with the help desk any reported user issues. And we've got the systems administrator and engineer. Again, that is a title. That is just a title. Some of these systems administrators may be called systems analysts. And they're responsible for supporting different systems, including hardware and software. Software applications, the workplace. Solution architect, guess what they do? They design solutions. So you could work for a company where they simply come to you and say, okay, we'd like to, that we're recruiting 50 new team members and we're starting a new department. We're bringing our finance team in-house. We're bringing our finance team in-house. We've outsourced that previously. We're now bringing them in-house, and we'd like you to tell us what we need from an infrastructure perspective for us to be able to bring our finance team in-house once more. A solution architect would look at what the business needs, and then they would then go and draw out a technical solution. You will need XYZ number of servers with this operating system, with this financial package, financial software package. On your servers. So a solution architect designs an architect, a system for an organization. You present a solution to a business need. For that role, you would need a knowledge of network design, different applications, different operating systems, respond to a request to present a network and systems architecture for the business. IT manager. Now, a lot of professionals I know say that the IT manager doesn't need to come from an IT background. They don't need to know anything about IT, that they need to be business professionals. They can come from any area of the business. But I think it's actually, I'd almost say vital for an IT manager to understand systems that they're required to manage. If you're managing professionals, if you're managing a team of systems administrators and engineers and technical support, solution architects, and you don't understand the systems that the team is supporting, that the teams that you manage are supporting, then you may struggle to be as effective in the role as someone who has an understanding of those systems, or at least some of the systems. An IT manager role, in my view, shouldn't be a hands-off role where we simply sit around and manage the team and just do the performance management, mentoring, and administration management. It helps to have an understanding of what your team are actually supporting. It helps because in the event of issues, you're able to offer an informed opinion. I remember a time when I was leading a team of database, IT technical support, service delivery managers, and a lot of professionals, really knowledgeable professionals. And one of the senior engineers came to me one day and said that we needed, well, he submitted a proposal about an upgrade to the company's email systems. He submitted the proposal and I said, yes, we'd go for it. He said that we needed to, first of all, test the solution for 100 users at head office. So we went and we purchased, I approved the purchase of that email system for 100 users for test mode. We were then going to roll it out to 3,000 staff. After about 2 months of testing, the senior engineer came up to me and said, this system is slow, so we need to buy more memory. And the memory that we would have been required to buy would have cost £3,000, which we would have been able to afford as a company. But I then asked the question that, okay, that when you initially provided me with the scope for this system, out and we bought a system that was meant to support 3,000 users. And you're now testing that system with, let's say, 4 gig of memory, 4 gigabytes of memory. You're testing that system, and you're telling me that the system now needs more memory because it's slow. But that gigabytes of memory was meant to actually serve 3,000 users. So why is it slow? And why do we think that buying more memory would speed the system up? A gig was meant to work for 3,000 users, and yet it's struggling with 100 users. So I questioned him and asked him to go away, and not to go away, but just to go and rethink what was actually causing the speed issues. Because I felt that if 4 gig was meant to serve for 3,000 users, and it was only serving 100 users and struggling, then I felt that memory, the fact that the memory, that the system was slow, couldn't have been down to the memory. So I asked him to go away and just to investigate what was actually causing the speed issues, what could be causing the speed issues instead of the memory. And he did go back, and with all credit to him, he eventually returned and said, no, it wasn't the memory. It was something else, which he fixed. So again, if I didn't have that understanding of how memory is meant to work and how the processors meant to work and how all the different components of the PC or servers are meant to work, I wouldn't be able to question or to input into decisions that the team are seeking to make. So it's always good to acquire the relevant knowledge for your role, whether you want to work in management or on a help desk or in technical support. It's important to acquire knowledge to enable you to perform your role well. If you're a network administrator or engineer, then you may end up supporting routers, for example, and firewalls. So network administration is where you end up supporting routers, firewalls, hub networks on your infrastructure. So you're not necessarily supporting the servers or the hardware. It's about configuring the network, just as you would work to configure your wireless router at home, for example. Although in most cases, our router tends to be plug and play. You plug it in and then it works, or you hope it works. But that is not actually meant to be how we manage our routers at home. For example, most internet service providers send out their routers with a default password. And they tend to mark their routers or to prefix their router names with a BT XYZ or VM Virgin Media XYZ. Now, most cyber criminals know the default passwords to these because it's available on the dark web. It's actually available on many sites, not to talk of the dark web, but it's available. Default passwords are available. So when you receive your home router The first thing you should actually do is to log into the control panel and change the default password. Else, a cyber criminal driving past your house look for routers to hack into, readily hack into your router and begin to see different systems and data on any connected devices on your home-based network. So a network administrator configures routers and firewalls in the workplace. But gain experience as a network administrator by changing the default password on your home-based router and changing the default name. I did a previous session through the ladder back down online on our YouTube channel, actually, where it was, I think I called it Windows 10 and something else, Windows 10 administration or something like that. But in there, I actually did a whole session on changing our default passwords on our router and changing our router name and things like that. So we may want to, or maybe during a break in about 15 minutes, I'll actually go and look for the link to that and post it in the chat. But network administrators and engineers, you may want to actually go and start looking at your router configuration. Please don't change anything that you know that you may put you into, into difficulties. So only change one thing at a time and make sure that you copy the config, take a screenshot of the original configuration of your router so that if you change it and something doesn't work, you can make sure that you just quickly change that back. So you may want to gain practice as a network administrator, change your router name. I know someone who said that they changed their router name to virus XYZ, so that anyone driving by or even sitting on a train, viewing their telephone wireless connection would see the word virus XYZ and they wouldn't even want to try and access or hack into their phone or their home router. So change the name from the default name so that your router name isn't reading BT or Virgin Media XYZ, so that anyone driving past or cyber criminal driving past won't pick that up on the list of routers available. And then they think, okay, that is BT. So that is definitely a BT router. And let me just try the default password for BT routers to see if I can hack into their network. So that is the work of network admins and engineers. They configure the network, wireless network, and the wired network within workplaces. Storage administrators and engineers, they are, that is clear in the name. They configure backups and manage backup devices in workplaces, in the cloud as well. Backup devices, making sure that those storage devices are operating as they should. And I'll add backup administrators to this category, actually, because backup administrators tend to ensure that data within organizations is backed up onto storage. And they're not only responsible for backing up the data, they're also responsible for retrieving the data. So let's say a user rings the help desk to say, I've lost my whole data on my hard drive. That data has been backed up. The help desk may contact storage to say, we'd like to retrieve XYZ backup tape. From a month ago, because this person has lost all their data and it hasn't been backed up they haven't backed it up from their local hard drive. So we'd like to retrieve the backup tape from a month ago when they last backed up their data. So storage backup administrators are responsible for backing up and storing our data within our organizations. The advent, though, of cloud-based storage, things are a lot easier for workplaces and indeed for home-based consumers. If you've got OneDrive on your laptop or desktop, or you've got iCloud on your phone, for example, what you're doing is you're storing your data in the cloud on a backup device, on a storage device in the cloud. So storage administrators and engineers work within organizations or with cloud providers to manage storage. Making sure that those backup devices, backup drives aren't full. There's enough space to store data on. Making sure that servers, on-premises servers now in offices, that they don't run out of space, of disk space. Then you've got the heads of these teams, Chief Information Officer, Chief Technical Officer. They are senior leaders. Again, there's been a lot of debate around whether CIOs and CTOs should have any technical knowledge at all, or whether they should simply come from the business. Again, I'm biased in that I believe that a CIO or CTO should have both business knowledge and the technical knowledge to enable them to not only support the business, but to support their teams, to lead their teams. And then you've got the service delivery manager. Service delivery manager, they're responsible for ensuring that the operations of IT are in line with the business's expectations. So they manage help desk operations, they manage SLAs, service level objectives. They manage customer relations or business relations, more importantly. They manage relations with other suppliers, vendors. So like telecoms providers, they make sure that the telecoms providers are delivering according to the agreed timescales, an agreed level of service. So in all of this, in summary, the IT infrastructure, admin and management professionals are responsible for the design, implementation, maintenance, including automation and decommissioning of the IT infrastructure and its related components. Plenty of opportunities there, even in this simple and single category of roles. Plenty of opportunities for you and I to select our area of interest and to just go for it. Any questions now, please? Any questions? Questions, comments? And if there are no questions or comments, what we'll do is that we will take a brief break and then we will return at 11:15. Thank you. And I'll just go and find the link to the video and post it in the chat window now. So thank you for staying the course. And we've got database architecture, database administration, and database management roles. Again, within organizations, you can have different titles or the same title for, different roles. But we've got a few here. So we've got the DBA, the database administrator, responsible for with databases that have already been designed, already been built, already contain data. The database administrator may be responsible for backing up the data, databases, querying the data, creating tables and indexes, creating tables that will actually host or hold the data within the data. They may be responsible for creating views whereby a user of the database only gets to see what they need to see. So a database administrator uses a database, manipulates the data within the database, queries the data. They may sometimes be responsible for building indexes, backing up the data within the database, and responding to queries along with the database analysts. But the database engineer, they may be responsible for technical support of the databases. The users have queries and where they need to provide a technical input into why a database is not working. And the architect, I'm sure you get the picture by now. The database architect could sit with the business. The business says, okay, we need a database that will host 50 million records, and it will be used across 20 locations, 20 branches, available 24/7. A database architect would design that database for the business. They would draw out a design. Okay, it needs to have this amount of memory, needs to have this amount or this amount of processing power. Is to have this size storage. That's what an architect would do. Data analyst, similar to the database analyst, is a person that focuses on the data. So they're not responsible for queries, for designing queries or designing indexes. They're focused on the data within that database. They will analyze the data. that has been produced from the database, from the queries. So let's say I input a query into a database saying, select all instances in this database, or all people in this database that live in the UK. Case administrator or analyst may design the query. They may design the select statement. They may also run that query. And the output of that query, that is the 500 or so users that have been pulled out of that database that live in the UK, would then be analyzed by the data analysts. So do we understand the difference? The database administrator is responsible in many instances for designing queries or running those queries, maintaining the database, whereas the data analyst acts on the results of those queries, the database. Engineers as well, they're similar to database engineers. And I spoke to a gentleman last week, actually, who said he's a data engineer, but he doesn't know, he doesn't write queries. That he doesn't write queries, but he prepares the data that the business needs. He prepares the data that his business needs and presents it in reports or dashboards to the business. A data analyst may take that input from the data engineer. A data analyst may receive input from the data engineer in a report format or a dashboard format, and then analyze the data. Then we have the database manager. I mean, so they simply manage databases. Could take part in database administration, could manage the database analyst, could manage the database engineer, but they could also be hands-on. Now, what do data scientists do? The scientists are really brilliant, and I'm working with a couple in my current role. They are actually responsible for helping a business to identify what questions need to be answered from the data in this database. Queries do we need to actually write? What queries do we need to design? What do we want to know from this data? To find out, what are we seeking to find out? So we're collecting all this data. Why are we collecting this data? What do we need to find out from this data that we're collecting? Do we understand that? So a data scientist, maybe before a database is designed, maybe finding out, maybe asking the business, okay, what information do we need to know? The business may turn around and say, well, we need to find out how many of our customers work in the UK. or live in the UK? How many are under 50? How many are over 80? A data scientist would find out, first of all, what questions need answering, and then they would then work with the database administrator or the database architect, database analyst to design or propose design features for the database. They would say to the database administrator, okay, you need to design some queries will answer those questions that the business needs to questions about that, because I'm not sure whether we're clear as to the difference between a data scientist and a database administrator. Any questions, or should I just repeat that? A show of hands on the screen if I need to repeat that, please. Okay, in the absence of any hands, I'll move on to the business intelligence analyst. Again, they are seeking to support the business to reach intelligent decisions, to reach decisions to grow the business, to help the business to understand its customers, to help the business to understand its market. They again work with DBAs, with data scientists, and they need skills to query databases. They may actually be able to design queries themselves. Now, the database developer, the database architect, being responsible for saying, okay, this is what the business needs. And so I'll tell you that the business, this is the business need to develop a database that supports 50 million citizens' records. It will be accessed across 20 locations. A database architect will say, okay, that you need XYZ database operating system. You need, that could be Oracle or MySQL, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. It could be Oracle, MySQL, or SQL, or another database operating system. The database architect will draw out that design. This is what we need. The developer would now be responsible for developing, for creating the database structure, the operating system, creating the main queries, designing, developing the tables, developing the database itself, creating all of those, creating the tables, creating the database, installing the database, creating queries, building indexes, whereas the administrator, the database administrator, would be responsible for using those indexes. Queries that have largely been developed by the database developer. We've said here that the database team, the database roles are responsible for the design, implementation, maintenance, and decommissioning of databases, along with data analysis, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, which are both artificial intelligence and machine learning are emerging careers. Artificial intelligence used for? Can anyone think of something that artificial intelligence is used for? If you can, put it in the chat window. But think about face recognition software, for example. That is something that AI is used for. And there are a lot of discussions about the ethics of artificial intelligence. That's another area that people may want to consider as a career. For security, thank you. Thanks so much, Chidera. You said that it's also used for security. So face recognition software. Biometrics. Machine learning used to remember input to an AI system. Now, we've got a lot of developers here. We've got a core developer who also works with the ladder back down now. Coyote, here's your area of specialism. Are you on the call still? Are you on the call still? Okay, not sure if Coyote is here still, but here we've got software application, architecture, and development duties. What developers do, and this is what I refer to as the real IT. Oh, okay, sorry, Coyote, I see that you've raised your hand here. Thank you for that. So Coyote works with the ladder back down, and he's a very intelligent developer, you know, and as I said, these are people that I refer to as the real IT, the real, the real deal. Software application and development duties include developing and building software and solutions by coding using various programming languages, including Python, .NET, C#, C++, PHP, Java, JavaScript, building UI and UX graphical user interfaces, as well as blockchain. But there are so many others. The reason I say that developers are the real IT professionals is because without software, the technology device would be, you know, a simple decorative device. Without software, your laptop or desktop would not work. Your phone would not work. Without software, your wireless router would just be a plastic box. Without software, your smart TV would not work. Without software, Alexa, if you've got that, would not work. And that's why, again, I emphasize that developers are the key IT professionals, and there is plenty of room for developers in society. If you go on any job website, if you go on any banking careers website in the industry, you'll see loads of jobs that have remained vacant for months on end. There are not enough developers or programmers out there. Can be described as a bit difficult, impossible, or impossible for you and I to become programmers. I think we would not be with any PC device today. Some people have learnt programming, which is why we're here today, using a PC, using Zoom, in the internet, using a wireless connection. Because some people have taken their time to learn how to program, how to code. Again, going back to the question that Olubumi asked earlier, there is no need, except if you want to, for a programmer to attend university before they apply for a job. A university degree. However, most employers, when you're applying for a programming role, will be asking you for evidence as to what you have developed, rather than for a copy of your degree. They don't ask you for evidence of what you have developed. If you haven't got anything online to point them to, they may do a technical test for you. They may do a technical test because they want to see and do, rather than see what you have studied, what you have read. It's one of the easiest careers or disciplines where you can demonstrate your knowledge to prospective employers. You can develop a website and post it online. So you can readily show a prospective employer, this is what I've done. Whereas with other careers, you can't readily show, you can't easily show a prospective employer what you know. You have to attend an interview and then you talk about what you've done, and then they have to reach a judgment call as to whether you really do know as much as you're professing to know. Whereas as a developer, you can build something and then just easily show or point prospective employers to what you've built. And I can assure you that if you're considering a career in development and you're ready to sweat and bear the, the sleepless nights for a year, you'll be rewarded forever. An uninterrupted career. As a developer, you cannot be jobless for long, unemployed for long. So these are different programming languages used for different things, used to develop different things. There's also languages used to develop databases, for example, like Transact SQL, which we haven't included here, and PLSQL. Transact SQL is used to develop Microsoft SQL databases, although that can now be used along with Python, whereas PLSQL is used to develop Oracle databases, can be used with Python, can be used with .NET, can be used with different technologies. You've got Java, JavaScript, used for websites and for applications, Java, I believe. And then you've got PHP. So many different languages that we can use to enjoy a long-lasting career. There are some different development roles. Some. We've got front-end developers who they're responsible for the websites and developing the user interface. So they develop the front end that the users see, websites. Back-end developers develop databases and other infrastructure applications. Now, what are databases? How do databases interface with a website? Well, let's say you've got Amazon, for example. You access Amazon's website to place an order. The customer, that website, you see the front end that would have been developed by a front end developer. Place an order or you search for a product. That product is pulled from, that product information rather, is stored in a database in the back end. And when you place or when you search for that product, the product, a SQL, an SQL query now runs. As you place that order, an SQL query now runs and sends a message to the database in the back end, present that information on the product that you've just searched for. So back-end developers develop the database in which that product information is stored. Front-end developers develop the website that presents the product information to you as the customer or consumer. Full-stack developers are able to develop both the front end and back end systems. So they're able to develop front end websites as well as back end databases. How? Because they have a knowledge of different languages. So they will have a knowledge of Java, JavaScript, and then PLSQL, SQL, PHP, and other languages. So full stack developers develop both back-end systems and front-end systems and applications. Application developers may be responsible for solely developing software like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or a bespoke software, your financial accounts software, payroll software. Application developers work to program and build those applications. Then you've got software engineers who design applications, and they may, and design, websites and the databases, and they may also be responsible for developing in any language. As a youth, if you want to go or an adult, if you want to go and study software engineering at university, you may be presented with options to study modules to study all different programming languages. Developers, software engineers in particular, and then developers are responsible for not only developing these applications, but then they're also responsible for managing the application lifecycle from the specification phase. through to the design, development, and testing of the application. So a front-end developer won't just design a website. No, they first interface with the business to find out what they are required to develop. So they talk to the business, gather a specification. What do we want this website to deliver to the customer, to the consumer? Want to present to the customer through this website. So they take a look at the specification. Then they design the site itself, graphics, how responsive it's going to be, colors, then they now code and then work with the business to test their development, whether it's an application or a website or a database. So it's the developer or software engineer is not just responsible for simply just coding whatever they want to. No, it starts from working with the business to understand the specifications of what needs to be developed. Application needs to do for the customer. If you're an application developer, what does this business need that application to do? We're looking to sell a financial application to customers. What do we want that financial software application to do? What is the spec? Questions? Comments, please? Ode, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I got something to add.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. For the I'm struggling to put on my camera. Sorry. Yeah, for the software engineers, one of the another thing that it does is like they write code that interface the there's a way the hardware that we're talking about, the physical hardware of the computer, like the way the computer talk to the processors and they talk to the to the memory. So they write the code in form of in form of Java, Python, and stuff like that to relate how those codes is being interfaced. You know, the way the processor talk to each other. So the software engineer does that as well. So they put the code together so that how the part of the computer relates together to talk together to do what they need to do. So that's all the parts of what the software engineer does as well. So they use COBOL, they use all this Pascal, all these Python, the programming languages that you mentioned earlier on to do those things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, that is invaluable and you're absolutely correct there. So if if software engineers don't do their jobs, again, we won't have any computers because our memory on the computer, our processor on the computer, the email software won't know when to send. When we click on send, the system won't know what to do with that email. When we click on open a file, the system wouldn't know what to do unless the software engineer has actually coded that into the system. So thank you so much for that very valuable input, Emmanuel. You're absolutely correct. Software engineers do much more than simply working on applications. They also work on the hardware itself, code. They develop code that instructs our systems in what to do, our hardware systems in what to do. So thank you for that. So again, we can see that there's plenty of room for anyone to be a developer. And the good thing about development is that there's no age limit. If you want to work as a developer till you're 80, till you're 90, there is room for you because the world is so short of developers. There's room for you at any age to start to learn, and there's no retirement age for developers. Questions before we talk about security? Further questions or comments, please? Okay, let's take a look at data and infrastructure security duties. So we're talking about data security and infrastructure security. Maybe I should have talked about information security and infrastructure security. So I'll rename that. Information security, infrastructure security. The responsibilities or duties of data and infrastructure security professionals. They're responsible for implementing technical controls, physical controls, so technical security, physical security, administrative and management security, to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our information assets. Of information security professionals is to make sure that we preserve the confidentiality of our information assets so that only people that have a need to know what is in an information asset actually have access to that information. So we ensure the confidentiality, we preserve the integrity of information so that the information is not altered or amended by an unauthorized person. So as information security professionals, we preserve the confidentiality of information assets, making sure that only people that have a need to access that information in our charge gain access to that information. We preserve the integrity of that information, making sure that information that's been placed in our charge is not altered by an unauthorized person or by someone accidentally. There's also responsibility for ensuring that information in our charge is available at the right time to the right people. Through those different aspects again. So let's say we're looking at Amazon again, Amazon the store now. Then we'll have internal files that need to remain confidential, including confidential to senior management, to the IT team. IT, Amazon's IT team may have an information security, well, they will have an information security team. Within that, there may be a vulnerability management team. The vulnerability management team will be responsible for fixing any identified vulnerabilities on the system. Vulnerability assessments are conducted. A report would be prepared, or could be an annual audit or a periodic audit. A report would be provided with a list of vulnerabilities that need to be remediated. So that it remains confidential to vulnerability management team. And that is what confidentiality is about. It's about ensuring that only those that need to have access to private or sensitive information actually have access to that information. Integrity. If Amazon were to have this vulnerability report prepared for them, presented to the vulnerability remediation manager, vulnerability management team, so that nobody the report is the report to say the auditor said we've got 20 major vulnerabilities. Nobody alters that to say, oh, we've only got 10 major vulnerabilities. Preserve the integrity of our information so that it is not modified by someone who shouldn't have modified the data in error or deliberately. Availability is clear to ensure that information is available. So Amazon, for example, their security team would ensure that the systems, or would seek to ensure that the systems are not subject to an attack from an external source or an internal source that takes the servers down so that customers cannot place orders on the Amazon website. Amazon, the security team would need to ensure that not only is the website available and up and running 24/7, but also the databases containing product information is also available 24/7. Our security professionals were responsible for ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. And duties include patching systems, applying fixes and patches to systems when they're released by vendors to reduce the risk of a vulnerability resulting in an attack against our systems or an outage. Security is also responsible for monitoring systems to ensure that they remain secure and available. And we've got threat intelligence professionals who attend seminars, there's online journals, reports, onto forums, just to obtain information on threats, potential security threats to systems, to their company systems. And we've got incident response planning and management, professionals, security professionals who plan towards the management of an information security breach or incident. Not only do they plan towards responding to an incident, but they also respond to an incident in the event of a breach or an outage on the corporate system. We have intrusion detection and prevention. This is the responsibility of information security professionals as well, where they monitor for intrusions to the corporate systems, and they also seek to prevent those intrusions. We have risk management. Now, most information security professionals that I know tend to want to work in the infrastructure security management. So they go and do all these technical courses and obtain all these technical qualifications. But one thing that I always say to professionals in any industry is that we are all risk management professionals. For a financial officer in a company, yes, you're going in there to manage the finances and to maybe send out invoices, receive invoices, process finance, but you're also managing the risk of those invoices not being paid. If you're an HR professional, you're managing people risk. If you're a recruiter for a company, yes, your main role is to recruit professionals, but you're also managing the risk of recruiting the right type of professionals into the company. The same applies to IT. We are all risk professionals in IT. Whether you're a database administrator or a developer, you're still managing risk. And the core responsibility of an information security professional is to manage risk. Or managing the risk of an insider or an external threat. Seeking to disrupt your business by either taking your systems down or accidentally causing an outage on your systems. Information security professional. Insider threats include an end user who goes and accidentally clicks on a link to a website that introduces ransomware that affects your 3,000 systems on your infrastructure. So whilst many information security professionals might think, I'm just a security architect, or I'm just a security analyst, I just work on the help desk, you're really a risk management professional first and foremost, because you're actually in there to reduce the risk of an insider or an external threat actor from causing a disruption or a security breach on your infrastructure. And this doesn't just apply to information security professionals. I often say that every single employee in the workplace, single member of your household that uses your wireless network, or employees at work that use your wired or wireless network, each individual is a risk management professional. Trained to watch out for any threats, to watch out for phishing emails, to not leave their PC unlocked when they walk away, to not leave papers with secret or confidential information lying on their desktop when they walk away. So we're all risk management professionals. In the security industry, though, there are risk management professionals. There is a career for you and I, if we want to manage risk, manage information security risk, manage technology risk. And what do? We're responsible for assessing the risk based on the threats to our systems, internal and externally, assessing those risks, identifying the vulnerabilities that we have within our infrastructures, whether that's at home or in the workplace, and then proposing remediation risks that we've identified. So let's say at home, you identify that what one of the, that your husband or your wife or a member of your family has shared your password, your router password, with their friends. And you know that one of their friends is actually a really skilled IT professional that could hack into your network in future, or simply log into it in future because they've now got the password. You assess the risk. Okay. And then you now remediate that. What would you do to remediate that risk of that person that your child has shared your home wireless password with? You would change the password. So as information security professionals, or as even information security IT users rather, we're responsible for assessing the risk. Our information on our systems and managing those risks. Disaster recovery and business continuity planning. Information security professionals and IT professionals in some cases are responsible for disaster recovery, where they plan towards the recovery of information systems in the event of a disaster, in the event of an outage, in the event of a security breach, in the event of a cyber attack against the organization. between disaster recovery and business continuity planning. Well, business continuity planning isn't just for information security or IT professionals. Business continuity planning involves planning for any sort of interruption to the business, e.g., a global pandemic. That is what business continuity planners do. They plan towards any interruption. What is the role of InfoSec now in business continuity planning? Well, we all know that at the start of the pandemic, a lot of organizations, or most organizations, had to start scrambling towards providing secure remote access for their employees. Able to log in, and information security would have worked hand in hand very closely with IT to make that happen. IT would have established the gateways and unlocked systems so that professionals could log in, but information security would have been responsible for ensuring that staff were able to log in securely. So if you work from home and you have VPN, a virtual private network software on your laptop, been provided by the information security team. And that software just provides a secure direct link between your laptop and your office network. Encrypted link, encrypted tunnel between your home computer and your workplace systems that authenticates you, as Emmanuel kindly reminded me of earlier. So that is the work of information security professionals, and they also report, audit and report on information security controls. So you could actually go out there after you've studied information security and maybe worked in the industry for a while and try and get a role as an auditor instead. And funnily enough, I do know quite a few people that have changed careers from a financial auditor to a systems auditor, to an information security auditor. That's been happening a lot recently, where people have said, you know, I'm a bit tired of just doing financial auditing, and they've just changed careers to information systems auditing to report on how secure an organization is at a particular point in time, to report on the controls, on the technical controls that they've applied to their systems, physical controls, security policies and management controls, to ensure that their data and information remains secure. There are different roles. We've got the technology risk manager, the cybersecurity analyst. And a lot of people tend to ask the question, what is the difference between a cybersecurity analyst and an information security analyst? Cybersecurity analysts tend to focus on, cybersecurity and information security, maybe I should say that. Cybersecurity focuses on technical security, on the network security, on the router security, on the web security, on security that involves digital platforms, online platforms. Whereas information security takes a wholesome look at securing information not only on our digital devices, not only on our PCs, but also stored away in files in our filing cabinets. Information security analysts take a look at the overall security of information assets, whether that's on paper or on a PC, in a safe, in a filing cabinet, or on a computer. And I remember many years ago, I used to work in a place and I would walk around each evening just to see how many staff had left their key in their locker, in their locker and left for the day, left their keys in their drawers where they're meant to store secure, sensitive or private information on paper. I also often look around when I see workplaces or hospitals, for example, where staff have a badge and they turn the badge to the opposite side so that you can't see their name. Our badge is meant to be there. It's meant to be given for security purposes so that everyone knows who you are, you know, when you're walking through the office. But when you turn that badge the other way, no one knows who you are. You could be anyone who's just grabbed someone's badge or found someone's badge outside and just walk, and you're walking around the hospital with no one knowing who you are. So an information security analyst or information security professional is concerned with security overall, rather than just digital security or cyber security. Then we've got threat and vulnerability management analysts who assess threats, vulnerabilities, and report on those or may remediate those. Then you've got the cybersecurity engineers, cybersecurity architects who design the cybersecurity infrastructure for the organization. The engineers, they manage the cybersecurity and security, things like your antivirus, anti-malware, information classification systems. Again, a lot of these roles, the titles are just used interchangeably within organizations. So you could apply for a cybersecurity analyst role and they tell you that you're going to be responsible for the entire architecture and everything to do with cybersecurity and information security, actually. Then you've got the risk analyst and manager, which I mentioned before, who analyze, they identify risks and they analyze the risks with the cybersecurity team and work towards remediating those risks, making sure that controls are put in place to reduce the probability of the risk occurring, or if the risk does actually materialize, to reduce the impact of the risk materializing on the organization. So let's say a risk has been identified that an external hacker could hack into a customer relationship management system, a CRM system. A risk analyst would work with the cyber team to identify controls to reduce that risk or to reduce the probability of someone hacking into the system. They could say, okay, we're going to put a firewall around it. We're going to put it behind, multiple firewalls. We're going to close off excess ports so that they can't access it through any ports that aren't needed to be opened on that system. So they identify the risk. The risk is that they identify the threat that a hacker, the hacker is a threat actor. They identify that threat actor could hack into the system, into the CRM system. They then identify the vulnerabilities, which could be some ports are open that don't need to be open on that system. They could identify a vulnerability that a lot of people have access to that system that don't need to have access to that system. So that is the threat that they've identified. They've identified the probability as well. They'd identify the probability based on the threat and the different vulnerabilities that they've identified. They identify the vulnerability, sorry, and then they now look to identify what they can do to reduce the probability, which is remove any excess users that don't need access to that CRM system. And they also close off all those unnecessary ports, as I've said. That reduces the probability of the risk occurring. But then they may also want to do things to reduce the impact in the event that the risk were to still materialize. What could they do to reduce the impact? Well, they could create a backup of that CRM system. They could also create a cluster or a replica of that system, so that in the event the risk were to materialize, they could instantly switch over to the replica system or the cluster, which would reduce the impact. So a risk analyst, risk manager works to not only identify risks, recommend controls to reduce the impact and the probability, but then they also will work towards remediating the impact or the the fallout if the risk were to materialize. So they would work with their cybersecurity analyst or the vulnerability management analyst or whoever's responsible for fixing the incident in the event that we were to be hacked into, in the event that the CRM system were to be hacked into. So risk analysis is a really interesting career, and it's something that most people don't consider because they want to actually be involved in the hands-on. I want to be an architect. I just want to be involved in the hacking, in the fixing of the hacking, in the pen testing, things like that. But there are also a lot of opportunities in technology risk management or information security risk management. And that's a career that we haven't put here actually, but penetration testing, that is also something that may be of interest to some of us, whereby you test. So you're referred to as an ethical hacker, where you're hired to test company systems, to try and hack into those systems so that you can point out vulnerabilities to the company before cyber criminals find them. That's what pen testers do, but apologies, that hasn't been written here. Information governance managers, they're responsible for governance, for policies and strategies around information governance, information risk management, information security. They write up all the policies and the frameworks. We've got the business continuity manager. I mentioned business continuity disaster recovery previously, and they're responsible for ensuring that the business is able to resume operations and to continue to operate in the event of a business interruption. Incident response manager, they would respond in the event of a disaster and coordinate the different teams' responses and actions in the event of a disaster or a business interruption, mainly when there's an IT disaster or IT interruption, ransomware attack, hacking attack, or IT outage, which may not be due to an attack. The incident response manager and team would stand up and they would respond to that incident, try and identify the incident, try and contain the incident, which is very important, try and make sure that the incident doesn't spread beyond, a small landscape if possible. And then they would now remediate, fix the incident, and then identify what went wrong, learn lessons, and then shut the team down until a further incident were to occur. Your SOC and your CERT analysts are responsible for monitoring threats, internal and external threats to your infrastructure. So that's another career path. They monitor and recommend actions, and in some cases carry out actions to remediate internal and external threats. So they will attend seminars, they'll listen to the news. If they're internal, your SOC team, then they will be monitoring systems and fixing any threats, fixing any issues before an incident occurs. With your CERT analysts, they'll be monitoring all these vulnerability reports from different teams, from Microsoft, from Oracle, from AWS, from all these different sites, from SANS Institute. They'll be monitoring and reading a lot on that and just trying to work out if any of the identified threats or vulnerabilities could affect the internal infrastructure of the organization they work for. So that again is another interesting career for us. Consider. IT procurement. So we are going to shortly round up. We've got IT procurement duties, including sourcing. So IT procurement teams tend to work with the IT department to source hardware and software. They may manage the vendor relationship. In some companies they do procurement, in some companies they don't. They will also be responsible for contract management. So they manage the contract. They work with the head of IT to budget and forecast IT spend as they would do with other teams. Then they also do the administration, sending out invoices, making sure that invoices are settled. And then they also maintain an asset inventory, a configuration management database of all IT assets. Procurement may maintain that. Sometimes it's maintained within IT. But procurement may be tasked with maintaining that asset, making sure that IT keep the database up to date, and that they manage the life cycle of renewals to termination. If they don't have an overview of that asset inventory, of that asset database, then they won't know when the contract expires, if you're leasing those assets, how much to budget for renewals. So procurement, in some cases, are responsible for maintaining that asset inventory. And they're also responsible, as we've said, for supplier management, hardware and software vendor management. Any questions? Any questions before we summarize? I'll just go to the summary, and let's just say this again. As I said at the beginning, that there are plenty of opportunities for you each to venture into. And when people ask me, so which one should I go for? I mean, what should I go for, security or should I go for development? I often say that it's really dependent on your temperament, on your aptitude and strengths. I tried development at the start of my career. I actually used to train SQL database programming, but I didn't enjoy it because at that stage of my life, I wasn't really as patient as you need to be a developer. You need to be really patient and quiet. And so I just, changed tact and went into infrastructure before moving around a bit and ending up where I am today. But if you want to venture into a career, whatever age you are, please don't mind whatever age you are. Just choose based on your temperament, your aptitude, and your strengths. You're logical, you're patient, you're level-headed, then please consider programming and development or incident management, because you need to remain calm in the event of an incident. You don't want everyone to be fleeing for the exit and you're fleeing for the exit as well. As an incident manager, you need to be the level-headed person who stays to resolve issues. Like answering questions, you may want to consider a technical role where you get to implement and support different technologies, because you will be challenged in a technical role. You may sometimes be faced with a challenge, as in an issue with a system, where you have to do your research, you have to ask questions, you have to go on the internet and ask for research. You may belong to some forums. But whatever you choose to do, please just do it well. And please don't say, there is no room for me. Please don't say, I'm not smart enough, because I can assure you that you are smart enough. Do not say you're not good enough, because I can assure you, you are good enough. You are more than enough. You can do anything you choose to do, as long as it's your choice. So please, don't say, there's no room for me in this industry. If you've started out in this industry, you've found that it hasn't worked out for you, and you've left, I'd say, please return. The career path you chose prior wasn't suitable for you. It may be. Whatever the case, find your path and stick to it. If you fall, you stand up again. If you fell, you get up, try again. Because until you give up, you haven't failed. You've just succeeded in trying time and time again. So please don't give up. Whatever you do, do it well. Before I take questions and answers, I'd just like to take this slide. So if you are unsure of anything, if you want to discuss a potential career in IT, or you'd like to discuss anything about your career, about what choices are available to you, please feel free to book a free half-hour speed mentoring session, a telephone call, on the Ladder Back Down's website. Once you've booked that session, we'll have a chat with you. I only do it on Tuesdays and alternate Saturdays at the moment, but I will change that at some point. But you can go onto the website and just book a free half-hour speed mentoring session, and we'll talk through your choices. But please, again, don't say that there is nothing for you out there, because I can assure you there is room for you. Whatever your age, whatever your race, whatever your accent, whatever your capabilities, there is room for out there for you only if you desire.